When you said the word money, I had this visceral response that just kind of went, ah! It's a time of year where I feel really out of control with money, really like my hands are tied behind my back. Money feels like this, like this unwieldy thing that I'm trying to control right now. And I start feeling the fear.
Money is never just about money, it's about who we are, what we've been through, and the systems we live within. This podcast is about money stories from real people, and the power of speaking it out loud. This is what happened, this is my story. I'm Harriet Formby, a chartered accountant, fractional CFO, and trauma informed finance coach. I work with mission led business owners, changing the world for the better. I help them make money feel good, do good, and amplify their impact. This podcast is not about glamorized rags to riches tales. It's not about fixing our so called flaws. We invite people to tell their own money stories. We also bring in subject matter experts who share both their lived experience and their professional wisdom. Today, I'm joined by Sumi Fitzgerald, a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant specifically for small service-based businesses. Sumi helps business owners turn good intentions into concrete, impactful actions that make their work more inclusive and manages the fear that can come with it. They've been doing this work long before Instagram was a thing, training hundreds, maybe thousands of people, auditing organizations with more staff than a football stadium, and bringing all that experience into the small business world. Sumi also brings a deep academic and coaching background to this work, with an MA in race and ethnicity and training in the feminist coach theory. I'm so excited to have Sumi with us today to share their money story, perspective, and insights they've gained along the way as a DEI consultant. So a big welcome to Sumi.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad you did the intro and not me, because there's no way I would have explained myself as well as that. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's so great to have you here, and I'm really, really interested in hearing your perspective on this. So, I love to start off with a check-in, and one of the ways that we do this here is to just say to you, money, what's coming up when we talk about money? What kind of feelings or reactions are coming up for you today?
When you said the word money, I had this very slight, but definitely their visceral response that just kind of went, ah. Yeah, and I think that's I think right now, like for context, we are recording this in the middle of school summer holidays, and it's a time of year where I feel really out of control with money, really kind of like my hands are tied behind my back. Money feels like this, like this unwieldy thing that I'm trying to control right now. And it's just not happening. It's kind of, yeah, it's, it seems to get better every year, but I've just got that summer fear where things go a little bit quiet. There aren't as many clients. My income drops a little bit. And I start feeling the fear and I start having those little nagging, like, maybe it's time to go get a proper job, feelings. But yeah, it's quite low level compared to where it has been in previous years. I think I'm like year 6 or 7 in business or something, but yeah. So that's where I'm at today. A little bit kind of money feels quite elusive and quite scary, and yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm at with it today.
Totally. I think people listening to this are going to be nodding along because this is so relatable. I think the summer is all set up to be this amazing, lovely time, isn't it? But it's also when you're a small business owner and it throws you into so many different directions. I think a lot of people are going to relate to this August feeling. So, how we relate to money is often shaped by a lot of different things. For example, it could be around upbringing, family, culture, education, community, religion, experiences, sometimes even traumas. Could you tell us a little bit about what you feel has perhaps shaped your relationship with money. Are there any particular kind of stories, messages, moments that stand out for you?
Well, I think it's kind of for context important for me to tell you kind of who I am. I always just describe myself as brown because it's the most factual thing. But my mum's side of the family are from Sri Lanka. They are Sri Lankan Tamils. My dad's side of the family are Brummies, so white British, but my dad died 15 years ago, and so to me, my family are Sri Lankan Tamil. Like that's the side of the family that I interact with all the time. I think that's really shaped my kind of experiences around money because I think there's a lot of course, I don't want to like generalize to everybody's experience, but it's just that I've heard so many people talk about second generation immigrant family experience. And so my mum came to the UK in the it was 70s, I think. And she came to study and she has that sort of classic, "Oh, I worked 2 jobs while I studied" sort of story. So I think that's really kind of shaped a lot of my experiences as well as I think there's quite a lot of cultural ideas around like what you should do with your money, what's good to spend your money on, what isn't. And at the same time, I grew up in a very, kind of white middle class area, and so there's sort of like a layer of complexity there because, um, yeah, growing up in quite a relatively affluent area, I think, has kind of come into that. So I kind of feel like I've got some conflicting experience around money, really.
Yeah, that's totally makes sense. You mentioned there about there was some expectations perhaps about what you should spend your money on or what you should do with money. Could you talk a little bit about that in terms of what that might have looked like?
Mm. So in my family, and again, I don't want to generalize, but we spent a fair amount of time with other Sri Lankan Tamils. So, just based on the kind of our little bubble, it felt very much like the things that you can spend your money on are things like property, investing in education. There's a really strong focus on your kind of legacy and what you're leaving for your children.
Hmm.
So, oh, my mum talks all the time about, we have very open conversations about what money is going to be there when mum dies. And there's a very kind of, I've worked my whole life so that you can have this when I'm gone. I remember like my sister having a massive go at me. So my sisters are a lot older than me. So
Mm.
they were 16 and 17 when I was born. So imagine it's like having three mums. So I get to kind of uni age, I'm about to go to uni, and I had this job. I think I was a receptionist in a like beauty salon, and I think I earned £60 a week. And I bought some. So I don't know if you remember slouch boots. Were they slouch? But
Yeah.
they were like these
Yeah.
cream suede slouch boots that cost 60 quid. So like my entire week's wages, which sounds a lot when I say an entire week's wages, but I only worked, a couple of evenings and a Saturday.
Yeah.
And my sister had a proper go at me because like she didn't use the word frivolous, but that was like my takeaway. Like there are things you don't spend money on. So you don't spend money on yourself, like
Mm.
on having a nice time. It's that classic thing of I'll sometimes be I think my mum's mindset shifted a bit, but growing up, I'd be just sitting or mum would come visit me and we'd be sitting in my living room, like bored out my mind. Like I can't tell you how bored we are. And I'm told, Mum, come on, let's go out, let's go have a coffee. And she'd say, why? We've got coffee in the cupboard. And it's
Mm.
because this kind of it's like you don't spend your money on going out and having coffee and having a nice time. And you find the bargains. So there's this real kind of, it's not only buy what you need, it's like be really frugal, but I mean, my mum just spends so much money in charity shops. She won't spend money kind of full price um in a shop. So yeah, it's very much like you've got to invest in the future. And your money is for other people, it's for helping family out. So, like, big spends would be kind of, I don't know, um my dad paid to so my mum met my dad here in England, and he paid to get other members of the family over. Yeah, so you'll be quite generous with your money, but not generous like, "I'll buy you lots of nice things." It'll be generous like, "I'm putting this much money in." I mean, all the kids have got savings accounts set up for when they go to university. So my daughter's 7 now, but mum is paying into a kinda university account. So it's that kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's all about kinda legacy building.
Yeah, so it's kind of, it gives you a real sense of responsibility, and it's, like, beyond your lifetime, essentially. So the thing that's kind of being installed as the values and the belief system around money is that this is not just about you in this lifetime, this is about what you're gonna leave as your legacy for your children and for your grandchildren, and that's yeah, there's a lot of, there's a real sense of, like, this is a good thing because this is how we make sure that our future generations are taken care of because, we make sure that our families look after the next generation, which is a really kind of great thing to have as a system. But at the same time, potentially it's a lot of pressure when you are almost being, if you're growing up in a place where you go down to the shops and there's pressure, the marketing is there to say, buy this, but treat yourself. If you're kind of school age or just after you're trying to fit in socially as well, I guess, aren't you? And you're like, well, I want to have the nice boots. And then there's this kind of pressure then when you're quite young yourself and you're just, your first job, just learning what money means and what it does.
Mm.
And you're seeing other people treating themselves to some boots, and then you're realizing that actually this conflicts with, the expectation of me and my family, the expectation of
Yeah.
me. And it's a real kind of lesson almost in, there's an expectation. And maybe you knew it already. Maybe it's something you'd seen, really young and maybe more subconsciously. But it's really interesting because it's almost like that first time then that you realize that there was, even if it's not written down as the rule, it's like there is a right way to spend my money and there's a wrong way to do it. And if I'm doing something that's not, it's perfectly legal and other people are doing it, but I am finding that this is actually breaking an expectation on me. And well, you probably felt a certain way when that came up. I don't know if that, came up for you at that point. Or...
I mean, at the point, I think I probably just thought my sister was being a bit of a cow, but but
Yeah.
it's funny how, like, I mean, I've noticed it come up in me recently.
Mm.
Yeah, even so I'm very much a one and done kind of parent. So I've got a 7-year-old, and that is plenty for me. But it was a factor in like our decision. A big thing for me was around um like in the back of my mind was this sort of, what do I leave for my daughter? And if I have a second one, that gets split in half. And in this day and age, what can you do with half the amount? Like, um, so the decision for me about having a second child or not was not wholly, but in part down to, okay, well, what's that going to mean for my daughter's future? And my really close friend will tell you that I kind of hound her a little bit to be like, "Yeah, but what's your son gonna do once you die?" And she's just looking at me like, What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "But you're making me feel anxious. Like, what's your plan? What's your
Mm,
financial plan? What is he gonna do? Like, where would he live?" It still comes up in me quite a lot, and, um, yeah, I think I've got this kind of underlying, I don't know what you'd call it, like, money story that is because it can all get taken away.
mm,
Um, I think it's a it's almost like well, the shit will always hit the fan, so you better prepare for that. Like, things will go wrong. There will be a point where the rug gets kind of pulled from underneath you. Um, you better make sure you've got something in place for that.
yeah, that sense of almost like you're there isn't a safe, you need to be your own safety net almost. It's almost like no one's going to save you. You need to make sure you've
Mm.
got this handled. And yeah, it's interesting what you say about your conversation with your friend because it's almost like there isn't one British way something's done, but something you will hear is people are like, my kid's 18, they're off on their own, they make their own decisions. Whatever they do, that's now their responsibility, which is a very different, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but there's a very different sense of the upbringing that you are going to make sure your children personally, I think that's probably
Mm.
quite a nice way to be is to make sure your children, taken care of. And there's a lot there with, in terms of like the baby boomer generation where potentially people in many ways had a logical this is how you get on the property ladder as long as you've got a basic job you're going to be there and you're going to have a job and you're going to retire at
Mm.
55 all of that story means that you can say right well my kids should go and fend for themselves but like we live in a world now where the rules don't work really it's not like oh if you just do this then everything will be fine so actually that kind of um the want to make sure your children, your children are going to be taken care of and they've got what they need is actually really good for survival instincts, isn't it? It's like, actually, let's be responsible for the next generation. It's definitely like a thing we probably need more of in society, people to take
Mm.
responsibility and not just say like, you're on your own, go on, when the world is a very different place potentially than
Yeah.
it has been, with property prices and all of these other things. But at the same time, it does then mean potentially it brings up guilt around spending because
Mm.
you're kind of thinking, well, I should hold this back for the rainy day, for the future legacy fund, for the investment, whatever.
Yeah.
And it can, potentially then, like you said, the examples of not going out for a coffee, it's almost like, well, does that then become something that, yeah, that the joy in the moment and not that all joy in the moment is about spending money because obviously it's not,
Mm.
but there's some things that actually, you know, you might enjoy doing that you maybe would hold back from because you are worried about being frivolous with the money or
Mm.
spending it in a way that's not long-term thinking which could be
Yeah.
interesting.
I think there's so much in money that I guess I mean, but starting my own business forced me to confront some of these money stories because so much comes up when you're trying to make your own money. And I'm sure there's loads and loads of stuff that I'm yet to uncover, but like there's a lot of, on the one hand, yes, it makes sense to be sensible about the future. It makes sense to think about what am I leaving for my children? And at the same time, like I really recognize how it comes from a place of anxiety rather than just a very logical um yeah, rather than yeah, it's not just a purely logical, "Oh, I think this is the right way to do it." It's driven by anxiety, I think, and, I mean, I'm sort of thinking about, like, my family history and, where that fits in. Like, my mum came to the UK, and so there was a point at which 2 of my uncles were on the very last flight to the UK before the visa restrictions changed,
Mm.
where you couldn't just come over from Sri Lanka and be like, "Right, I'm gonna live here." Um, but also there were well, you know, or how well listeners know about, kind of what happened in, Sri Lanka and the kind of, um I don't know what to call it. We call it the Troubles, but it's, you know, in effect, you know, it people probably saw kind of the kind of most recent genocide kind of with 2009, in Sri Lanka, but it's got a kind of much longer history as, you know, a lot of these things do. But, you know, I think there's been kind of several points in my family history of things of, you know, the rug being snatched. Um, and for example, my great grandfather, I think he was stationed in Malaysia. He was like some sort of officer of something, some sort of clerk in
Mm.
Malaysia, and he would send money back to my grandfather and my great grandmother, and the money just stopped one day, and he died, and nobody told my family, and so my granddad had to just start work, and you know, there's all sorts of um, you know, there's stories around, you know, like all my family's furniture being like pulled out onto the street and set on fire by mobs and things. So there's like this undercurrent of somebody will take
Mm.
it. And like this is gonna sound really like um this is such a privileged problem to have, but when I was renting, I don't cope very well with living in rented property. And when I say I mean every day I thought about it, I mean it. Every day
Mm.
I thought, this landlord could just suddenly decide they wanna sell up and they're gonna tell me to get out, and I just could never put down roots. I could never make that place feel like my home. I felt on edge all the time, like somebody is gonna pull the rug out from under me. And so I've got this real need to kind of just create some sort of financial safety, whilst also simultaneously being in a position where I can't create that much safety because like, I'm not, you know, I'm not, yeah, I'm not from like a super wealthy family or I haven't won the lottery or anything. So, so that's mostly where money comes up for me. And yeah, just going back to that point about summer, I think why that sort of lull in summer, it feels quite dangerous to me actually. And I have had to sort of learn to trust a little bit that it's all right. September will come and things will start moving again, but it just, um, yeah, it feels like quite a lot. Uh,
Yeah, it is a lot. And I think, you mentioned there it's anxiety, but it's not. Sometimes we think, well, anxiety is about worrying about things that won't happen or whatever. But like these things have happened. Like you're talking about grandparents, that's in your living memory. It's something that's really happened, and that, sudden death and the money stops. The risk of, losing your house because of mobs. It's like that
yeah.
literally happened. And so you're, potentially in, a safe position now, but your makeup of, your nervous system is telling you, actually, be careful because things can happen, and they have happened, and we've had to live with the consequences as a family, and that's real stuff. That's real stuff. And
Mhm.
it's interesting when you mention how that relates to the quiet period, because you know August could mean, yeah, it's gone quiet because everyone's gone off on holiday and they're not looking to, to work or whatever. And that means that it is a change. And like you said about the landlord could take things away. And so it's totally see why the mindset of kind of accumulating things so that you're prepared to cope and look after yourself. It's no wonder that property is something that's been installed in you, because actually if you've got something that people can't take away, it is security and safety. For those of you listening, if this episode is resonating, please do leave a review, and make sure you are following wherever you get your podcast from, so you'll be the first to hear when the next episode lands. And if you know of a pal or a business friend who would enjoy this conversation as well, please forward it on to them, tell them all about it so they can enjoy it as well. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. Obviously, you've been in the business world a little while, but yeah, how has that been? Because these are things, being a small business owner is quite uncertain in itself, isn't it? I know you said that you'd come through some of the money story stuff, you'd address them or you'd come across them more as you went into business. But could you share a little bit more about maybe what that was like, firstly, and what's kind of come up for you in terms of the business end of it?
Well, actually, because like, I know it's very uncertain running your own business in some senses, but actually for me, it's all part of this security in the same way
Mhm.
that fear of a landlord could take it away, it feels a bit like that with an employer. An
Yes.
employer could take it away. Nobody can take my business away from me. I mean, like, nobody is gonna one day just call me into the office and be like, "Actually, we decided to just cut your role." Like, I'm the only one that can decide whether
Yeah.
my business is here or not. And I guess I do feel some comfort in the fact that I have some control. Like, it's weird, it's like that it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? You've got control in the sense that, like, say, there was a massive vet bill and I needed to make loads of money. I could just be like, "That's it. I'm gonna put this offer out. I'm gonna do the biggest launch I've ever done in my whole life, and I'm gonna make that money."
Yeah.
Um, so there's that security.
Yeah, and if you were in a job, you couldn't really influence it. It's just like you
Yeah,
get your salary and that's it. You
and
couldn't
that's
make
it.
money suddenly when you needed to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and at the same time, that's not how being a small business works. I have had so many times where I'm like, "Right, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this launch, and I'm gonna make." I've never been like, "Right, I'm gonna do a six-figure launch or even a five-figure launch or whatever. I'm gonna do this amount. And yeah, I'm gonna get my mindset
Mm.
in the right place." And then, like, the actual launch is just a big fat pile of. So I have this feeling that, yeah, I have control, and then I swing wildly to, I have no control. So it's a interesting one, and I feel like I've got to kind of acknowledge there's a lot of kind of privilege in my position because I'm not in a position where I don't have to earn any money, but I'm also not in a position where I've got to earn lots of money. Basically, if I have a terrible month, I know we will be okay. It's not oh, we're going to fall into arrears or we're going to not be able to eat anything at all. We might need to eat more cheaply, but I know ultimately that we're gonna be okay. So there is that certain level of security that I've got. I mean, how my business started was I've always wanted to be self-employed. I was the only one in my family for a while who wasn't. But I had a job, I was in the charity sector. It was a decent job, I was on 54K. I'd reached head of level. Um, 54K in the charity sector is a lot, and
Mm.
I just couldn't make the jump because it would have been a loss, it was giving up. And then I had, basically in 1 week, I found out I was pregnant and that I was being made redundant. Um Which it wasn't a fun week, it's one of those things where you look back and you're like, "Oh, okay, that was actually, like, one of the best things that could have happened."
Mm.
I do what I do, which is spreadsheets and try and control money and make sure I know what everything some people will bury their head in the sand. I'm like a go full-blown control freak and try and, look at every penny. I'm self-employed by circumstance, basically. Um, I could not find a role that would enable me to parent and work at the same time. At the time, there's that big gulf between when a baby's born and when they're eligible for the 3 hours childcare. It was like for us, that was a 3.5 year gap where you're just like, "Right, where am I supposed to how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to work
Yeah.
and do whatever?" And it was that, you sit I sat down and I did the maths and I was like, "Right, if I go get a job, I'm gonna end up with" I think I worked it out to be like, I'd end up with 300 quid a month at the end of the month. And so I said to myself, "Right, all I have got to do in my business to make it worth my while is to earn £300 a month." And
Mm.
so, whereas before kind of running my own business was all about like how much money would I lose from my income,
Yeah.
it became I've only got all I can do is gain right now. All I've got to do is earn £300 a month. And I didn't do it in my first year, I'll be honest. But yeah, I yeah, it feels like I'm getting my groove as a business owner in terms of my income is kind of stabilized a bit. So like over the years, I seem to somehow end up with roughly the same amount of money, even though month to
Mm.
month it varies wildly.
Mm.
The year it tends to be quite similar.
It's interesting because you mentioned about almost like it was the fear and anxiety driving the vigilance with the spreadsheets and then knowing the detail, but actually that analytical lens meant that you could sit there and go, right, is it better for me to go back to work and be out of pocket on childcare? And it sounds really lovely actually that you got to the point where you kind of gave yourself grace to say, actually, I've worked the numbers. As long as I make, at the start, £300, that's the goal. And that sounds, when you go onto the internet and you see everyone shouting about 10-figure months, all this stuff, it's like that's not relevant. If you know your position, like if you know, right, for this to work to begin with, this is what it needs to do for me, that is a really good place to be in because you can just focus then on I don't need to listen to all the noise of what everyone else is telling me to do. I know for my personal situation, this is going to work for me.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's evolved and things have changed and whatever, but are you still quite vigilant with your spreadsheet sort of systems and systemization, or have you kind of
Yeah.
relaxed and yeah.
Yeah. And actually, like, I think some of my, like, spreadsheets and systems have become it's not that complicated, I don't wanna make it
Yeah.
sound like I'm doing a lot of maths, but, um, I think that's a big part of my of security, um,
Mm,
there, and it's also been really key to me kind of working through some of the money stuff because to begin with, I found it really hard to pay myself. Really
mm,
hard to pay myself because it was like, but what if there's an expense? I can't afford to put that money in my personal bank account
mm,
because what if something happens and I need that
yeah.
money and I've gone off and spent it on I don't know what. I was just investing in my business, like not like massively. I could never afford like the 5K a month business coaches, but I was kind of I was I was, like, investing quite a lot in my business and fully drawn in by a lot of the "It's really easy, just do this and then you make money" kind of messaging. But yeah, and I wasn't paying myself, and I think I stumbled across Profit First.
So you found that worked to help you.
Yeah, and I've got
Mm,
my own version of it. I don't think the actual suggestion or the percentages in Profit First work for me. I had to, like, come to that place myself, but
mm,
that really yeah, that really helped to kind of actually start paying myself, and it felt really good the first time we went on holiday as a family because I paid for that with the business. And also a point where, like, because you can imagine my personal budget is also quite finely controlled as well because I
yeah.
need to have that control or, what if something happens? But for a long time, like, my husband, we've got, like, an amount that gets, um, a standing order that's, like, fun money, so we have our own, like, little personal allowance, and for a long time, my husband had a personal allowance and I didn't, and I would be
Mm.
questioning, like, every coffee I bought or whatever, and now I have the same personal allowance as my husband, so, like, it's been a real sort of, like, I've had to kind of it's been like a shuffle
Mm.
to get there, and I'm still kind of shuffling towards getting to the place I want to be, but, um, yeah.
This sounds really interesting in terms of, like, you've taken the system of profit first and you've noted, like, I hear this a lot, that it doesn't quite work, like, the exact system isn't gonna work for everybody, but actually taking the principles of it and applying it in a way that works for you, and I really like the idea that you've got fun money, you've accepted that, like,
Mm,
actually having some capacity for that is brilliant because it means that you can start to do things that might feel counterintuitive given all the things that you've been around with money and being vigilant. But at the same time, you can have breathing space because you can go, okay, this is fine because actually it's in the budget, basically. This money
yeah.
is in the budget and I can have the coffees and it's okay. I'd really love to hear, in terms of your kind of DEI consultant hat on, do you notice money stories or patterns in the people or communities you work with or advocate for? And what do you wish people understood more about this in terms of inclusion, equity, systemic impact? What's going on there for you in terms of your expertise?
I'd say where it comes up the most, so I don't tend to d I say I don't tend to do direct work. I'll sometimes do kind of focus groups or surveys with, so as well as, like, solo service businesses, I tend to work mostly with kind of like charities or not-for-profit organizations. So I will sometimes talk to, let's call them normal people, because let's be honest, if you run your own business, you're not really not well, none of us are normal, are we?
Yeah.
But, yeah, definitely feel like the outsiders here, but in a good way. But so in terms of who I talk to the most, it is small business owners. And I think it comes up a lot when we're talking about pricing and how you kind of square pricing with social justice. And a lot of stuff comes into this because, there's a lot of conditioning around, particularly if you are a woman or you've been socialized as a woman to have that nurturing, caring, that shouldn't be paid well, that actually it's not okay to charge money. And what I find when I'm doing my work is people almost like people think that equity and pricing fairly mean charging really low prices to make it
Mm.
as accessible for everybody as possible. And I don't think that's the case. Like, the gender pay gap is way bigger for self-employed people. I think it's 17% for employed people. It's like 43% or something for self-employed
Wow.
people. So our pay gap is bigger. And so the answer can't be just drop your prices because, um, yeah, not that that's the whole story of why that gender pay gap is there, but, yeah, if I'm being really kind of, I don't know, like, this might sting a bit, but I think what happens is because people are so keen to think of themselves as they want to be a good person, they want to be social justice centered, and so they don't price too high. But sometimes I think a lot of the conversations around DEI focus too much on pricing.
Mm.
It feels very much like almost like a way to, legitimize charging low prices rather than dealing with your money stuff. That is
Mm.
the sense that I've got. So
Yeah.
peeling through all of those really sticky, difficult feelings around money, you can be like, "Oh, no, no, I need to charge less because it's good for the world." And actually it isn't. It isn't good for the world. Yeah, so that's probably where it comes up the most in my work, I'd say.
That's so interesting. It's almost like the message, if you're listening, would be to kindly say, if you are somebody who is saying, I keep my prices low, so I'm accessible, is that really why you're doing it? And two things: invitation to look below the surface. Some of this is a lot to deal with, so you might want to do it slowly to unpick what's really going on. But potentially you'll discover that there's other things that you're going to benefit from unpeeling and understanding and giving space to. But also, it's not necessarily the best way for you to be impactful with your business, because what if you made more money and then you had more reach, or you could, you know, get some help in, this is something that you might think, actually, if I charge more money, I can pay myself more and not worry about, um, not having enough to make ends meet. There's always this stereotype of like, if you're really, really giving, you can't have anything yourself, but then that leaves you depleted and tired and stressed, and you're not good to anybody sometimes. So that is a really interesting point there, that actually, are we
Mm.
undercharging potentially to avoid having to deal with that feeling and the ickiness and the problem and the tension around pricing, which is emotive in itself. So yeah.
And another little invitation of something to dig into is whether, because sometimes people will focus on their pricing in terms of like their business being accessible, because it's an easier thing to focus on than some of the other things you might be doing. Yeah, than some of the other things you might be doing that are excluding people from your business. So, for example, it is much easier to say to yourself, "It's my pricing. If I just drop my pricing, then that makes my business more accessible." When actually, it's not your pricing that you need to explore. It's all the kind of ableism or white supremacy or it's that you've absorbed. There's some other practices going on that are excluding people. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. Like sometimes I've seen people use kind of equitable pricing or accessible pricing as a shield from having to think about some of the harder stuff. And I mean, I've been on this journey myself. It is really hard, and I'm still kind of figuring out where I land with it, because it's a balancing act, isn't it? Because it is true that if you charge really high prices, it does become inaccessible. And accessible pricing is about trying to find that balance between like what resources you, but also what works for clients. The answer isn't always just drop my prices down. So I guess where I've landed at the moment is I do offer payment plans. So payment plans is a thing that you can offer. I offer like a discount codes on digital downloads. Basically, anything where I am trading my time for money, I don't discount, because I've got limited working hours, because I try and do everything within school hours. And I'm also still kind of trying to build my income, and I'm not earning what I not just what I want to earn. It's not quite not earning what I'm earning what I need to earn to not wonder how I'm gonna pay the bills, but I'm not earning what I need to earn for safety. We're one, like, boiler fucking up disaster away from being like, "Right, that's it. That's nice. No savings left." So, if anything else happens,
Mm.
we're a bit, and so for me to sort of and, I think it does depend on what stage of business you're at as well, is what I'm is another factor to think about. I think what you're able to do in terms of accessible pricing might be different when you have a business where you are always filling your high ticket offers and, you can put out an email and you always get, your sales are consistent. That's a different scenario to, um, to where a lot of people in business are.
Mm.
Um,
So what you're
yeah,
kind of saying as well is actually it's not the only place or even the first place to go to be accessible and inclusive is not just going to the money and making sure you've got, your pricing that you feel is accessible is actually probably to have the harder conversation of what else can I do that isn't monetary to be inclusive
yeah,
and being realistic that maybe you're not in a position to give too much time away for free because time is a finite resource and it's got an opportunity cost for me. And maybe at some point that's something I want to incorporate, but actually it's not by any means the only way I can be accessible to people. And it's probably not even the best thing to do because the stat on the gap is really interesting in terms of that being so much bigger when we talk about self-employed people and
yeah,
what's
yeah.
doing.
What's been on my mind a lot recently actually is thinking about what barriers I have that I don't know about, because I don't know if you remember seeing that, I think it might have been BBC News, where the woman realized she wasn't being paid. Like, the man said something about, "Oh, well, you're being paid to be here," and she went, "What? What? I'm not being," you saw kinda live that she didn't realize that the man,
Yeah.
and she hadn't. And it's one of those things where I'm like, it's really hard to know how equitable our small business space is. We don't have all the kind of stats and studies that get done in, so like a big business would do an audit. I mean, I know because I do audits.
Yeah.
You do a pay gap analysis. You would assess kind of promotion rates and you'd look at your recruitment processes, etc. We don't have that as small businesses. There is no data. I mean, I've been thinking about like what is going on in the small business world that we don't know about.
Yeah, because some sectors even have, it's really clear the banding and what you need to do to get to the next band and what you'll be paid. But there's just nothing like that, like you said, that will spot whether something's unfair. And you can say, well, this is down to negotiating. But if you don't even know that it's happening and you think it's normal not to be paid, then where do you go?
And there's quite a lot of secrecy around like pricing, and it's hard to know what's going on. I mean, I have been mulling on doing, I'm gonna say this on a podcast because the way I work is if I say it out loud, then I hold myself
Yeah.
accountable. I'm thinking of doing like a mini study on small businesses. I feel like I want to do a audit of what's happening
Yeah.
in the small business world to try and uncover some of this. Is what are people actually being paid and what opportunities are they having? And does that differ depending on who you are? Like, what is the nature of the beast
Yeah.
that we're dealing with?
That would be so interesting. And I'm not aware that that is being done. And I know there's things like what is people's day rate and there's some sort of benchmarking, but I don't think the wider picture across all sectors in small business or just like, are you getting paid for going, on the TV news segment? Like
Mm.
that'd be so interesting to know other people's experience. Yeah. Yeah. That sounds really,
And to kind of know what our issues are in our
mm,
kind of online small business bubble, because it does feel like a bubble. It feels like we operate a bit differently to, well, quite a lot differently to bigger organizations for obvious reasons.
that when we
Yeah.
have our own stories about asking for money or pricing, as well, on top of potential biases and unequal things that are going on. It makes it doubly hard because, one, if we don't even know that it's unfair, but also we've got to come out of our shell to be able to challenge it as well. So we've got two things against us and nobody's talking about them in a way that we can access it. Then yeah, definitely. That sounds like a really interesting study, and I think there'd be a real value in. I'm sure lots of people would want to get involved with that as well. And I've just got one more question for you, which might
Mm.
sound a little bit unusual because money we often think of as just like money is just this thing. But actually, money is also something we're in relationship with. So I'd love to ask you, if money were a person, what would you like to say to them?
I really struggled with this because in lots of ways, I've got too much to say.
Yeah.
Got too much to say to money. Um, I think I'd probably say, "Hey, I recorded a podcast episode with Harriet. You should go listen to it." Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna
that's it. You've said, yeah, this is for, yeah, that money can go and have a listen to this as well. Yeah, I like it.
yeah,
Yeah.
just listen to all you we're all having problems with you. Like, what are
Yeah,
you
you need to know what is going on here and take some accountability. Yeah.
exactly,
I'd,
exactly.
I'd invite anyone listening. Sometimes nothing comes. You're kind of on the spot and thinking, what? Why am I? What would I possibly write or say? But it can be a nice exercise to do to kind of think of money as a relationship and how you might approach that. So I'd invite anyone listening to have a go at that and see what comes up. So I just want to say thank you so much. It's been brilliant to have you here, Simi, and to have this conversation. I know our listeners are going to take so much from this story and the ideas and the examples you've shared here. I really recommend you follow Sumi. You can find them on Instagram at Sumi Does DEI. Search Sumi Fitzgerald on LinkedIn or go to sumifitzgerald.com, and all the links are going to be in the show notes so you can click straight through. I also wanted to just highlight that there's actually a free workshop coming up soon and an amazing resource that you can download right now. So I'm just going to hand back to Simi to tell you about those.
So as a caveat, I'm still in the process of developing it because it's August and I'm not doing this workshop until October. But I am going to be running a workshop called Find Your Inclusion Leaks and Your Missing Clients. It's a totally free workshop. And in an hour, I'm going to show you where potential clients might be slipping away from your business and what is causing it so that you can eventually fix it. So probably best place to find out about that is on my Instagram, Simi Does DEI, or sign up to my email list. And yeah, watch out for it in October.
Amazing. That sounds really good. I'm sure you'll have some amazing tips in there.
I do also have a free download called 5 Things I Have to Tell Almost Everyone. And it's basically, well, does what it says on the tin. There are things that I kind of let people know over and over again. And I've just put them all into a guide that you can download and be like, oh, I didn't realize that. I can fix that little thing there. So yeah, you can download that.
Excellent. That sounds like a really helpful resource, and especially that you can just go and fix the things straight away. So if you're interested in becoming more inclusive, which I'm sure we all are. Thank you so much, Sumi. You've been listening to the Money Story Project podcast with me, Harriet Formby. If you've enjoyed the episode, please follow the show, share it with someone who might want to have a listen, and if you can, leave a review. In the show notes, you'll find links to connect with our guest and to learn more about the project itself. And if you feel called to share your own money story, you'll find details there on how to be part of a future episode. Until next time, take care and have a great day.